Well, good morning. Looking real good, I gotta tell you. I gotta stay focused. Before I begin sort of sharing our work, I'll have the wrong dates up there too. See, we just go with the flow. I would like for us just to take a minute, so if we're holding anything, maybe just put it down. Don't have anything on your lap. Just a minute of sort of silent breathing, deep breathing, whatever deep means for you. I do it very selfishly for myself as well. It helps me get in the flow. So let's just take about a minute. Couple more breaths. And as you come back into the space together, if you could put your hand on your heart and just feel that. What I want to invite you to do is to really rely on it and hold that intelligence. To really integrate what we're doing up here, most of us are doing in the daily, right? Thinking, troubleshooting, writing grants, or grant reports. But really, this is really about how do we utilize, leverage, and honor the intelligence, the evidence base that's here. That's generational, that's ancestral, that every attempt to dehumanize it is being made and we're still here. So just really want to offer and hold from that space. Still wear your professional titles, but wear them lightly. No need to hold on to them too tight right now. You can always put them back on and buckle up. But today, just let it loose a little bit. Okay? All right. So again, good morning. It's great to be here. I just want to share also that my mentor, Dr. Howard Pinderhughes, I just want to give a shout out. Like 20 years ago, I'm like, will you meet with me? I'm trying to understand how to do this work right. And so I feel really honored, humbled, and grateful to actually be sharing space with Howie. Thank you. Thank you. Legacy, right? This is about legacy. So I'm with the RISE Youth Center. I'm going to show you, or you're going to watch what RISE is about. I'll talk about it. Yeah, thank you.
When I'm inside the RISE, I just feel really safe and comfortable.
There's a place where you can just come and not have to deal with stuff that's happening out the street or violence in the community.
It's a happy environment. Everybody's nice to everybody. It's all love.
Everybody here is positive. Everybody's so creative here. Being around that type of stuff, especially younger people that's creative, makes you want to be more creative.
We get so many different people from so many different walks of life and so many different experiences coming to one space.
I wanted to rap, record music, and have my own CD and everything. RISE has actually made it a reality.
I do film, so I always ask people for advice that do film here. You should come here to do something that you're not doing at home.
Yeah, I started off really bad, and once I started coming to RISE, they helped me with school, they helped me with my career. They gave me a place to be where I feel like I can belong.
Everything here, we take in a restorative justice approach. They don't look at you for what you've done in the past or anything like that.
I became an intern, so that kind of changed the way I was in school. I started getting my grades up by going to just doing homework and making an career plan.
We have a youth organizing club where a whole bunch of youth from the center or from the community can come together and pitch campaigns on how they want to change whatever it is in the community.
RISE's goal is to empower youth to make a change?
I ultimately believe RISE is here to expand young people's minds and show them what else the world has to offer.
People should come to RISE because there's something for everybody at RISE. I feel like there's a space for every single person in the community to be able to get something out of RISE.
RISE has so many things it can teach you. It can give you so many different jewels.
RISE definitely helped me realize that I could actually do something, that I could accomplish what I had in my mind.
So it's a little ditty of the Rise Center. What you'll notice is there were no adults in that video. And I share this for a number of reasons. One, because I think it's a really well done video. It helps me not have to be talking about Rise, but you can at least sort of feel it, hopefully. But young people, members at Rise, we serve young people ages 13 to 24-ish. They actually approached us about 3 years in and said, we want to make a commercial. We opened our doors in 2008. We want to make a commercial for Rise. We don't want any adults in it. Because the video we had was like a 6-minute video with a lot of adults. And with young people as well. But they felt like it was really important that they got to share what Rise meant to them. The other piece that is really critical is that they also understood and everyday experienced what it means to be a Black or brown young person in Richmond, California. The associations with that, how they're treated, when they say they're from Richmond, the reactions they get. And so for them, it was also very much this understanding of we actually need to own our narrative. We need to say what we're about. And so that was really important for us to understand and to share wherever we share this. They're like, take it, because we don't want to go with you to all these conferences. We got to be in school. We can't be there. But we think it's important to be able to share what we are. But that piece around the assault of the media, the assault of our sort of structural assumptions, perceptions about who young people are, who they're not, who they can be, who they should be. All that thinking and all that formulating and feeling was going on for young people in the creation of this. Those weren't the words they used at all. But what they said was, we know when we go somewhere and people ask where we're from, we pause and think about, do I just want to say the Bay? So when you think about when you eliminate and actually take out where you're from, your place, what does that do to you? That instability, that internalized deprecation, dehumanization, that is only coming from the external assaults. I'm going to share a little bit more about this, but we did a community-engaged inquiry process around young people's experiences with violence, trauma, coping, and healing. And what we learned was the way the media represents our young people, our Black and brown children, feels just as harmful and violent as interpersonal conflict. So when we think about our interventions, our violence interventions, violence prevention, violence interventions, we're only thinking about changing behaviors of young people. That's generally, even if our analysis is structural, our interventions, our outcomes, our investments are still behavioral. And so our work at RISE is to lift up the lived expertise. EBPs, many of us know what that means, evidence-based practices. For us, it's everyday praxis, boo. So to lift that up and to say that's the data we should be working with. So what I'm going to share around our framework, around ACEs, around our model of trauma, distress, and healing all really comes from both the everyday grounded experience we have and our understanding that these kind of conversations, understanding frameworks, formulating different ways, flipping the script on the way we're talked about is really critical. So how do we honor and acknowledge all of it without giving primacy to the social science research, to the slicing and dicing of our lives, so that it looks nice in a report? Our aim is to make shit hella messy. And I cuss, I will do my best, I apologize. I will do my best to not do that, but it's also a way, honestly, I alleviate my nervousness and my anxiety. We know that that's for our young people too. So I hope you can hold me in that space. What I'll say about the RISE Center is we provide a lot of services and programs. Probably about 40-some programs across 4 or 5 different program departments. I'm with the community health department. We were born out of violence and trauma. 4 young people were shot in front of Richmond High School and killed. mobilize young people to figure out, talk to each other, what are the needs? What do we want? What are our priorities? So RISE was born out of young people organizing, pushing on adults, making us actually do the work we're getting paid to do. And to do it right, and to do it at their speed and their pace, not at what's convenient for us or our funders or our researchers. The young people who organized for RISE did so knowing they would not benefit directly from the services. So we had 15, 16, 17, 18-year-olds talking about, I want to leave legacy for my younger brothers and sisters, for the other kids on the block. And part of this is couched in many young people in Richmond not seeing life past 21 or 25. So when you construct your life with that arc, how you think about decisions, how you think about your own outcomes around your own possibilities and responsibilities shift. When we look at youth development frameworks, we don't have that kind of arch. So any youth development frameworks, outcomes that are out there don't reflect the lived experience, the dynamic subjectivities, the dehumanization and the resistance of our young people. They don't exist. And so our job is to really rupture whatever we're calling our outcomes. They're not good enough. What we tell funders is we met your objectives, but if that's all we did, we're a pretty shitty organization because we need to be bigger and bolder than those outcomes. They are not enough. I get excited. I'm mad. So, beloved community, we heard the quote from Dr. Powell. So at RISE, we really invoke and work towards this sense of beloved community. That however we come in is just how we need to be. Doesn't mean we want to stay there, we should stay there, but however we come in today is exactly how we should be. And so that's why I asked you to put your hand on your heart, because that's right. Right? And throughout the day, I just invite you to do that. And so for RISE, that's really important. If you're mandated to come to RISE because your probation officer said you got to go to anger management, which we don't call anger management because we think you don't need to manage your anger, you need to be outraged. We're glad you're here. Thank you for coming. If your friends heard about it because they're in the music studio and you want to come check it out, we're glad you're here. If you're here because police are after you, and you need to come to a place where at least you know if you get picked up, you're not going to get physically harmed by the police, we got you too. So RISE is about that. And so wherever we go, we feel like, well, why can't we sort of invoke beloved community everywhere? And so what I hope and will commit to is invoking and being in that spirit with you all the next 2 days. Whoa, big shift. Okay, so I see some of you on your phones. That's great. No shame, no shame. What I'm going to ask everyone to do, if you're willing, which I hope you are, is if you have a phone, your computer, we're going to do some instant online polling. So let's, some way to participate, engage, because this feels hard, just this back and forth. So has anyone done online polling, instant online polling? Sometimes they have them on Facebook, you know. Which celebrity looks better? So, yeah, thank you, Jessica. We're going to flip over to the poll. Let's get your phones ready. And it's like a tweet. So you have like 140, 150 characters. So what you're going to do is go to www.menti.com. And when you get there, you're just going to put in the code that's up here, 910050. You don't need to put spaces in between. Is anyone there yet? So help out your neighbors, your neighboring table, the person next to you. Woo, we got one up. And just take a moment to reflect, tweet your thoughts about the question. And then once you enter, also make sure to take a look at the screen so you can see what our beloveds are saying. Oh, there's 3 screens. Let's see if we can get to 50 responses. I believe in us. I know we can do it. Oh, that's quick, 75. We're gonna do 75. And make sure you take a chance to just read as they scroll. And just take in notice, kind of, you're seeing patterns, types of trauma. Note it. And then when we get to 100, we're going to go to the next question, okay? Boom. Ooh, 104. Yeah, get them in, get them in. All of this can actually be sent out. So we can also make sure you get this information so you can see, again, the intelligence that's in the room. We already know. So this is just confirmation of that. So the next question, you should be able to, does the next question pop up? Yes. You know what to do. Be sure to read through if you haven't yet. Take a few more. Can go back to the PowerPoint. So make sure you take a look. We're going to switch back to the PowerPoint. But again, we can get this all to you. Thank you, Jessica. Technology is amazing. Okay. So really quickly, 2 comments. Like, what did you notice? What did you feel in going through that? Real quick, and I'm going to ask you to speak loud. Yes, thank you.
That we're not the only ones that are feeling the pain, the battle, that we're not.
Yeah, thank you. So, what's your name? Paulina. Our beloved Paulina said that we're not the only ones feeling the pain. We're not the only ones in it. That's what she noticed. Thank you. Anyone else? I said we could do 2, so keep my word. Yes? Vulnerability. What's your name? Natalie. Beloved Natalie. Vulnerability is what she noticed. So we're not alone, and there's a lot of vulnerability, right? So when we think about our own lives, the communities that we're in, that we're part of, that we are here to serve, that we are in service to, think about all that's going on, right? But often there's such this sense, I know for young people, feeling like they are the only ones, right? This collective isolation is going on. So for Rise, our work is always, every engagement is an opportunity and obligation for connection and love. Programs are just the platforms that we do that on. Programs come and go. But the connection and the love and the relationship have to be primary. So, how does that relate to trauma? So, lots of definitions of trauma. Actually, in the 3 minutes we spent on the platform, all of these definitions are in there. So again, the evidence already exists. This is nothing new. There's different ways we talk about it. Language is important, so all the ways we can language our experiences is really critical. For RISE, it's really important for us that we make sure we define everything we do and talk about. So for us, we have to define if we're a trauma-responsive organization, if we're a healing-centered organization, we have to define that. So for us, we work really from this place of all these with really understanding historical and complex trauma as a framework, and in which all these other layers and levels happen. And I'll show you another nice little neat and tidy graphic. But I put these up here because RISE as an organization, as I think many of us are, you know, we're in the trauma-informed world. The language is being codified. There's a lot of money going into it. We're not going to deny that money because it's our money. It's our young people's money, right? So, but we always want to be careful to say the science has caught up. Science is always catching up with what we know. So again, how do we integrate the science, like the ACEs, but not deify it, to say, oh, now finally we have some evidence. And I want to share some of the ways young people define trauma at RISE as well. Trauma is when you are scared of where you are or wherever you go. You can also feel alert at all times. So these are direct quotes from our members. My experience with violence is very brutal. I grew up with violence as if it were my sibling. Yeah. This one took us down when we heard it. I have to say, it stopped us because as an organization, we realized there's a way we were maybe creating more harm, more disconnection by not acknowledging the intimacy of violence. The familiarity, the reliance on it in a way that to change, to shift, to move away from it, we don't acknowledge that loss because it's still relational. And so for us, it was a lesson learned that we have to be different. We have to do different how we're talking about it, how we're acknowledging loss, but also how we're acknowledging the connections. Young people deal with a lot of stress, responsibility, isolation, and lost loved ones. It makes young people feel guilty, cautious, guilty, alone, angry, and sad. Being brown is already something that the society is trying to exterminate. Adding queerness on top of that and having patriarchy by its side is something I have to deal with on a daily. But wouldn't it be great if SAMHSA defined trauma like this? Oh, they will. We're here, right? We're going to push it. No reason we can't, we shouldn't. So again, we do our best to sort of share directly what our young people are saying. This was done from the campaign that I talked about to get a sort of more localized sense of young people's experiences and needs. It was called our listening campaign. There's some folks who participated. So, shifting to ACEs. We opened in 2008. We identified as a trauma response organization before kind of the industry started to bubble, right? So we feel like we have something to say about it. We started to get asked a lot by funders, public systems, other partners. So how are you integrating ACEs? And I have to tell you, I'm still figuring it out. I don't quite understand. ACEs has been around for decades. And so the reemergence of it, I'm still so curious to know, how did that happen? Who did that? I want to know. Nonetheless, it was really critical. It was a really important study. We're gonna use it, we're gonna abuse it to make sure our young people get what they need. But we kept getting asked this question over and over. So I did realize, like, okay, we need to have some kind of response that's not just, we're already doing it, we already know. Like I had to sort of take in my own ambivalence and irritation that now all of a sudden trauma means something because middle-class white people in a study have pain. So now we can actually invest something in it. So here's how we talk about ACEs, okay? We understand that, I mean, we have clinicians on site, so let me say this too. So you're gonna get bits and pieces of RISE as we go through this, because it's not really about RISE, it's about us. We get paid to show the problems. We get paid to articulate the problems in all kinds of ways. So how can we tell you how effed up our young people are, how effed up our community is, so you'll give us money? Money that's our money that was taken from us. I don't care if it's the endowment. I don't. Because any concentration of wealth is based on exploitation. So, and as a social justice funder, TCE knows that. And they should know it. So we understand there's this disorder. We get paid to name and treat disorder, but we don't want to treat it too much, because if we treat it too much, we're not going to be in our jobs, right? So for RISE, if all we did was talk about disorder, that video would look really different. Probably wouldn't exist. What we understand is there's ongoing distress in our community, right? So the disorder continues to pathologize the individual, the treatment, the burden is still within the individual. Distress understands, and this is just again for RISE. It may or may not work for you, but for us, it's understanding that young people live with a high degree of unpredictability. Wherever they go, school, Target, Wingstop, City Hall. Our city is very violent towards its young people, psychically, physically, spiritually, financially. That's just the city we're in. So it is distress. So what happens to our bodies when we're in distress? We all know that, cortisol levels, all that stuff is happening, the hypervigilance, right? So if we understand it's distress, and maybe there's a disorder in there, but that's sort of really identified by relationship, right? So if I understand distress, I don't even have to ask you what happened. I already know what happened. We live in atmospheric trauma. I already know that's happening. What I'm going to say is, thank you for being here. How did you get here? How can we make it easier for you to be here? What do we need to do to make your passage to RISE easier? And for those who can't come or don't feel like they can come, what do we need to do? Even asking what happened, and I know that's the shift from what's wrong, it still places the pathology and the responsibility on the individual. We have to go beyond that. For us, it's also about dehumanization. And I can't say for better, because it's not, but for worse, I mean, our current state of the state really shows that. I mean, the dehumanization we're experiencing is so explicit now. You know, our young people after the election, and even some of our staff, said, well, shit's always been bad. It's always been dangerous. It doesn't mean anything. That is true. That's reality, right? And there is an elevated danger that impacts communities differently, but all of us are in line. So we have to hold both those realities. So me, as an elder in the organization, it's like, how, you know, we got to sort of respond to, you know, the resistance. We got to be part of the resistance, really realizing other staff are like, well, how's this going to like make me any safer or in more danger when I go home? It doesn't mean anything to me in my lived experience yet. That has shifted, certainly. But I think it's how do we not dismiss, how do we sort of, again, hold all the realities, right? So for us, dehumanization is how we also understand atmospheric trauma. That if we don't actually name the psychic violence that then we internalize as Black and brown communities, as subjugated communities, as communities that have immense resilience and resistance, then how we address trauma, how we address healing will not heal our children. I would say it wouldn't heal any children anywhere. But what we know for Richmond and for Rise and for our young people, to name the legacy, to name the generations is so important to then be able to actually name what are they living, how are they living. So ACES, the questions that we push with ACES is how can ACES, this science, help us shift the frame from disorder to distress? If all these thousands of folks, we have now these correlations in a way that's packaged, neat and tidy, so we don't want to let it go, but I also am not going to, again, say this is it. This is the gold standard. It's not enough because it doesn't start at conception. So what we did also is we extended the pyramid because we know, and even with the science around epigenetics, right, that adversity doesn't start at conception. The stress my parents carry, the resistance and the resilience they carry, it's in me, as it is in all of us. And so for us then to race ACEs means we have to start from here, from historical trauma, intergenerational trauma. How does it play out in the implicit bias? We have to complicate this. As long as we confound factors and experiences, we will actually miss out on what's the lived experience and what's the messiness of healing that needs to happen. For us at Rise, and we're not there yet by any means, but for us, trauma-informed care, trauma-informed approaches cannot be that if they are not racially just. They just can't. We can't call ourselves trauma-informed if we don't assert and practice a racial justice framework. And we don't think anyone can or should. That also includes queer justice framework, gender justice framework, the intersections. So we don't call ourselves trauma-informed. We're working on it. We assert ourselves as a racial justice organization, but we know we have a lot of work to do. So my call is to say, we can't say we're trauma-informed until we can say, and the folks and communities we're in service to can say they feel like they are held, validated, loved, and feel and live a sense of justice based on our relationship with them. So, as an organization, we're in the nonprofit industrial complex, so we have to respond. I mean, we are a business, so you're not going to deny that. So there's ways we have to respond to what's coming at us, but we're also really mindful we have to assert our own expertise and narrative. So for Rise, we really look at layers of trauma and healing as very messy. It's even sort of doesn't show the messiness. These are the layers of it, but really understanding trauma and healing and dehumanization and repair happen at all these levels, from historical and structural to individual, interpersonal, I would even say internalized as well. So, for example, we run a hospital-linked violence intervention program. So a young person in Richmond or West County is shot, stabbed, assaulted. They go to the trauma center, which is about 20 miles away. In Richmond, we have no hospital. No, that's not true. We have Kaiser, but they're not a trauma, what's it called? Trauma center. They have an ER. So sometimes we'll get referrals from the ER. But they go to John Muir and Walnut Creek, wealthy, predominantly white community, about 25 miles away. So I'll get the referral, I'll get a call from the social worker. We have a referral, here's a situation. What we do is we visit bedside. So we start the engagement at bedside if they consent to it, or if their parents consent. And what we often hear, too often, from social workers is they're non-compliant. They're acting like a baby. They have 14 bullet holes in them. Shit, all they're doing is acting like a baby? That's it? That's all you got to deal with? Aren't you fucking lucky? Aren't you lucky? So I'm gonna say that's what I think inside, but my job is to be in partnership and healthy struggle. So my job is also to understand that this person is working in a traumatized system and is carrying vicarious trauma, and probably trauma of white supremacy, because most of the social workers are white. The nurses are white. So I gotta understand that I have decided to do this work, so that's my job. But what I also know is I need to know that I can go back to RISE, which is my sanctuary, to say, can I just share this happened? Here's what I did. I need to metabolize what it did to me to hear a social worker talk about a child with bullets in him acting like a baby. It happens way too much. So we just had a mother who lost her son. It was a freeway shooting last week. They decided to take him off life support. So me and our trauma and healing program manager met with her and his niece. And I got about 10 phone calls from the social worker and from the head of the trauma department saying, we really need you to get that consent signed. So nothing about how are they doing. Well, no, what I'll say is, wow, you know, they were so nice. That's what that actually said. They were so nice. So I'm sharing this, you know, I'm trying to like hold everyone in respect, but I also want to be real. It hurts. It hurts my heart. It hurts my feelings. It enrages me. It makes me so mad. And all of us should be this enraged. What I hope is the ways in which we're enraged is what really propels us to, again, flip the script. To understand that our evidence is here. And that we're glad the science catches up, we're glad the research catches up, but you will never keep up with our pace. For those of us who understand our in grounded community work, who understand that lived experience and hold that as primary. So for RISE, my job is to work with the social worker or whoever it is, our board of supervisors, a funder, a program partner. But my job is to continue to name this. So it's not like I'm bringing out this slide in every meeting and say, all right, let's run through this. But my job is to figure out how do I make sure that this conversation happens, all these levels are addressed in whatever conversation I'm in. So what happens in the hospital-linked work, the program I was talking about, the dominant sort of narrative is that, well, if a young person, if a black or brown young person was shot, they must have done something. So it's often, well, what did you do to get in that situation? Not unfamiliar from rape culture. So in the industry, the violence prevention industry, the outcome is to recidivism and to decrease the risk of retaliation. So there's already the assumption that they were in some shit that they caused and then they got shot. And you know what? That can be the case. That does happen. And it shouldn't matter. What we hear from young people who have actually shot other young people is that was the most traumatic experience they've had. So the most traumatic experience you've had is when you perpetrated harm. None of our interventions, none of our approaches hold that pain and honor that pain. And we also know that's not the first traumatic experience. Young people who are shot, usually, once we're dealing with the stabilization, it's housing, it's mental health, it's getting back into school, it's repairing family harms. We have a program we've asked the hospital, because what we also see now is in the families we work with young people who are shot, is domestic violence and sexual abuse that hasn't been shared. We will often feel that and hear that. So we are now struggling with and committed to figuring out how do we ensure we're integrating the supports and the resources. So it's not, oh, well, you're going to deal with that kind of abuse by this other organization, which is what we're told. They deal with domestic violence. You should just deal with gun violence. And so I'm saying this this is not an anomaly. This is how our work is organized and structured. So to be trauma-informed means we have to be racially just, means we have to do everything different. It has to mean that our widgets and our programs don't matter. It's about a relationship. And how do I stay in relationship, especially when I feel triggered, threatened, mad, hurt? I can't do that alone. At Rise, we never make a decision by ourselves. Well, I mean some, but you know. Like, am I going to send this email today or tomorrow? Sometime, right? But I mean, so when we're working with a family, it's never just one staff. If there's a crisis or if there's a member situation at Rise, and there are member situations every day, makes sense. It's always at least 2 people, 2 staff working it out. Because it's too much to try to figure out alone, right? My shit's gonna come up, right? I'm gonna be on my last nerve and do something I shouldn't do, so how do I bring someone in to regulate? So this is how we understand it, right? So I am gonna work with a young person or a social worker, but I'm also gonna make sure to name that we are responsible for supporting healing however they were involved in their shooting. It doesn't matter to us in the moment to engage and build relationship. It will matter, it may matter later on, but if you're shot and what we're told to ask is, and figure out, well, what's the risk of retaliation, and then what's the metric for that? No. What do you need? You want a hamburger? Let me go get you one. Sometimes they don't want our services. What we say is, we're here. So whether it's a week later, a month later, a year later. And we've had a good number of folks within 6 to 12 months come back and say, are you guys still available? Because there's other things going on. They've actually, because the level of violence and pain and lethal injury, it activates systems response in a way that's so different than other kinds of pain and trauma, that actually gets dealt with, but all the other things are still happening. And those don't get treated or addressed because we don't value those, because we don't actually see Black and brown young people in pain. We don't see them as having feelings. I have a master's in public health. I'm proud of it. I've worked hella hard. But there's nothing that I learned through my training. Well, actually, there's a lot I had to unlearn when I was in my training. That's the problem, right? So I'm an outlier. Those of us with degrees, we're outliers. And we make all kinds of policy, investment, research, intervention decisions, right? And for a lot of us, because the way young people of color, the narrative is we are danger, we are risk, we are problem, we need to be contained, we need to be sequestered. So it's all fear-based. Think about what happens when you make decisions out of fear, and then think about that collectively. Policies, interventions, investments. Collective decision-making from a place of fear and dehumanization. Intentions might be, we want to help anyone and everyone. But we know where intentions can go. Those of us who practice certain faiths, there's a saying. So again, we have to flip the script on everything. And it is hard as shit. It is really hard. There's not a lot of glory in it. It's very nourishing if you can build and cultivate the beloved community to be able to be in it with. I feel really lucky that I get to work at Rise. I feel really lucky that I get to come here and share what we do. It means everything to me. So how do we cultivate that together? What that requires is creating and investing in community in really different ways than we're taught, trained, funded to do. How much are we willing to give up? How much are we willing to give? How much are we willing to be vulnerable? As our sister said here, right? How much are we willing to actually open up so we don't feel isolated? So I would never ask a young person to share anything or at a level that I wouldn't share. And I'm also mindful, I'm an adult. I'm working with young people. There's boundaries, so there is stuff that, I'm like, you can ask me anything, but it doesn't mean I'm gonna answer you. Because you don't get to know what I was doing last night, or I'm gonna do tonight. But I do want to engage. Let's talk about how your relationship, your friendships, are you talking to anyone? Do you like anyone? Does someone like you? How does that feel? What excites you about it? What scares you about it? Every connection, even if your answer is no or I don't know, there should always be further conversation. So oftentimes the most I engage with young people because of my position is when there's a crisis. That's kind of the nature of my work. So again, young person experiences lethal injury, there's a death. What I have to really remember is if I see a young person who I worked with that our point of engagement was around them being injured, I have to continue the engagement so that it's just not based in that. It's just not based in that crisis. So even if it means like just seeing you and saying, oh my God, I'm so glad you're here. Can we hug? Is that okay? We have a no cupcaking rule at Rise. So we can't hug for that long, but we know hugging and connection, physical connection is really critical. Can I just hug you? I'm just really glad to see you. I know we can't have a conversation, but I want you to know I see you. Those kinds of things, again, prioritizing relationships over programs is key. And so that's one thing that we really learned a lot, especially from those quotes, is we have to prioritize the relationships. So when we asked young people when we did the listening campaign, what do you want? Like, what can we do? They kept saying, can we just keep talking like this? When's the next focus group? So how, again, like I know we're in this mode, we're trained. I'm a really good grant writer. I know how to do logic models. I know how to code switch. I mean, I think I do. I know how to do that. But I don't want to get bound by it or tied by it or like so uppity about it like I got it. I don't have it. And I don't know that any of us can say we do. I think some of us are pushing, are trying, but what it's going to take is all of us. And this is part of why I want to end with this quote on Beloved Community by Bell Hooks. It's that beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation. By each of us claiming the identities and cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. So that you see me and I see you, but not at the cost of anyone else's humanity. And unfortunately, we are far from that. So, we get asked, well, how do you do this? How do you like shift the frame? What are things you're doing? So I just want to end with just offering, again, some of the practices and approaches. A lot of them what I talked about was that working across roles and systems. So I know you're a probation officer. Half the answers are, that's above my pay scale. Well, what's at your pay scale that you can do because this is what we need, right? So you just keep asking. We're like, the worst anyone can say is no, but you know what? I'll keep asking. Some of you who I know in this room might know that. We have to acknowledge the ecologies of violence. What young people said to us is, you all act like nothing's happening. And that we should just figure it out. And then the ways we figure it out, you can't deal with that. You don't know how to hold that. So then you still isolate us, or you punish us, or you kill us. So to name and validate their experiences, to tell young people we love them. I mean, in one of my early experiences at Rise, I've shared this before, a young person, we were just getting ready for some kind of meeting event. It's just like, Katie, I just want you to know I love you. Like, I just love you. And my overeducated ass was like, oh my God, can I say it back? Like, why am I saying it? Like, is that okay? Is it going to break a boundary? We're laughing, but right? Like, why would I have that fear when all this is about is love and connection? But I'm like, shit, can I say it back? I better be saying it back, and I better say it first. I don't know you, and I love you. I don't know you and I love you. And my commitment is to know you and love you. So again, those shifts, there's big shifts, and then there's just in ways of being. So even as we think about how we're in conversations today, coming from a place of inquiry, right? Asking questions. Again, we say at Rise, we don't know a lot because all kinds of things come our way and we're like, whoa, that's a new one. I don't know. Can we figure it out together, right? So part of it is adults being vulnerable. Like, we're supposed to look like we know everything, we have everything, we don't. It's okay. What young people told us is like, we know you're in pain too. We can see it. And you take it out on us. So go heal yourselves. So we've actually started a trauma and healing learning series just for adults in the community. We're about to enter our fourth year, I don't know, one of those years. But really being told as adults, you all have work to do. And think about, I mean, here we are, what opportunity, right? Beloved community. Really important to us is these moral frames, good, bad, perpetrator, victim. All of us occupy these roles in some way, place, shape, or form at some point in our lives, sometimes simultaneously, right? In the listening campaign that we did, we asked young people about coping. Smoking weed, #1 coping mechanism. To escape the pain, to numb out. It's not recreational for our young people. So when we heard that as an organization, what we could have told all our adult stakeholders is we needed to start looking for that weed cessation money, to start running all these programs, right? Because that's the behavioral change that will come out of it, right? So obesity epidemic prevention, all of a sudden it's healthy eating. I see the X. Active living, I'm gonna take like 2, maybe 3 more minutes. Healthy eating, active living. I'm sorry, it's malnutrition. So I'm glad Kaiser wants to fund all this, but are you addressing the trauma? Are you addressing what are the social conditions that impact our metabolic health? And why does it matter that Johnny in Richmond eats hot Cheetos, but Johnny in the gated community in Danville eats them, and it don't matter? He can eat whatever the hell he wants. But Johnny in Richmond needs an intervention. So at Rise, we do kale and hot Cheetos. We'll do a Hot Pocket and a chia seed smoothie. We take whatever we can, because for us, our young people are hungry, right? That's food justice, people actually having food. So again, I know I'm rambling, but this is it. It's the mess of it. But again, avoiding these simplistic frames. So smoking weed, we should all be employing a harm reduction framework. So wherever a young person goes, they know if they smell like weed, they're still going to be allowed in there. And what we as an organization need to be prepared is to respond to it. Hey, you want to put on a different shirt? Maybe walk around outside for a bit, right? And what we also know is sometimes being high actually makes you functional. I mean, we all know that. I'm an avid caffeine drinker, right? So I do my best work at a bar. I made that pyramid at a bar. I kid you not. I just remembered. Yeah, I think it was a sidecar or 2. So again, we have to find joy. We have to celebrate. We have to laugh, right? I mean, we know, again, the embodiment is real. Laughing is so important, and celebrating and acknowledging. So I'm going to stop there because you could see what's about to happen.